For millions of Americans, SNAP, formerly known as food stamps, is the difference between hunger and a meal. It's a program that quietly supports families in every corner of the country, from bustling cities to rural towns. Whether someone is facing a temporary setback or living on a fixed income, SNAP is there to help put food on the table when times are tough. SNAP is the nation's largest anti-hunger program, providing low-income families with monthly benefits on an EBT card to buy groceries. These benefits can be used at most grocery stores and farmers markets, giving families the flexibility to choose the foods that best meet their needs. From fresh fruits and vegetables to pantry staples, SNAP helps ensure that no one has to go without the basics. It serves children, seniors, people with disabilities, and working adults whose wages don't cover basic needs. Many recipients are people who work hard every day, but still struggle to make ends meet due to low wages or high living costs. For seniors and people with disabilities, SNAP can be the difference between choosing to pay for medicine or food. Nearly two-thirds of recipients are families with children, making SNAP a cornerstone of child welfare. For these families, SNAP doesn't just fill stomachs, it helps kids grow, learn, and thrive. Studies show that children with access to SNAP are healthier and do better in school, breaking the cycle of poverty for future generations. To qualify, a family of 4 must earn less than about $31,000 a year. That's less than many people realize, and it means that even families with working parents can struggle to qualify. The application process can be daunting, but for those who are approved, SNAP provides a crucial bridge to better times. SNAP isn't just a safety net, it's an economic engine, pumping billions into local economies and supporting jobs. When families use their benefits, they support local grocers, farmers, and food producers, helping to keep small businesses afloat and communities vibrant. Every SNAP dollar spent multiplies, helping grocers, farmers, and small businesses. In fact, economists estimate that every dollar in SNAP benefits generates up to $1.50 in economic activity, creating a ripple effect that benefits everyone. For 42 million Americans, 1 in 8, the monthly EBT deposit is a necessity, not a luxury. It's a lifeline that helps families weather tough times, whether it's a lost job, a medical emergency, or rising food prices. But as of November 1, 2025, this lifeline is suddenly at risk. Changes to the program could mean less food on the table for millions, putting families, children, and communities in jeopardy. The future of SNAP will shape the health and well-being of our nation for years to come. The crisis began with a government shutdown in Washington, D.C. With Congress deadlocked over the federal budget, funding for programs like SNAP has been cut off. SNAP benefits, usually distributed at the start of the month, didn't arrive for 42 million people today. The USDA, which oversees SNAP, announced it couldn't legally release the $8 billion needed without a new budget. Most federal programs rely on annual appropriations. When Congress fails to act, the money stops. The Trump administration claimed it couldn't pay SNAP without explicit congressional approval, leaving families in limbo. Parents now face impossible choices: pay rent or buy food. Food banks are bracing for a surge they may not be able to handle. The shutdown is no longer abstract, it's a personal crisis for millions. As panic spread across the country, uncertainty gripped millions of Americans. News of the government shutdown dominated every screen, and families everywhere anxiously checked their phones for updates, hoping for any sign of relief. Grocery stores saw long lines as people worried about how they would feed their families in the coming weeks. The sense of unease was palpable, with many wondering how long this crisis would last and what it would mean for their daily lives. In the midst of this growing anxiety, President Trump took to social media and national television to address the nation. His words were meant to reassure, but also to rally support and shape the narrative. He spoke directly to the American people, acknowledging the hardship and promising that his administration was working tirelessly to find a solution. Trump explained that his legal team was actively seeking clarity on whether SNAP funds could be released during the shutdown. He emphasized that the situation was unprecedented and that every possible legal avenue was being explored. The president wanted the public to know that the government was not standing still, but was instead navigating a complex web of laws and regulations in real time. Drawing on past government shutdowns, Trump pointed to previous efforts to ensure the military received paychecks even when the government was closed. He suggested that, if the courts allowed, similar action could be taken to help SNAP recipients. This comparison was meant to inspire hope, but also to highlight the legal barriers that stood in the way. The administration positioned itself as both willing and ready to help, but made it clear that their hands were tied by the law. Trump and his advisors stressed that they were prepared to act the moment a court order gave them the authority, but until then, they had to wait. This approach drew sharply divided reactions. Supporters praised Trump's determination and saw his actions as a sign of strong leadership in a time of crisis. They believed he was doing everything possible within the limits of the law. Critics, however, accused him of shifting blame and using the legal process as a shield to avoid responsibility for the shutdown's impact. In his public statements, Trump also called on SNAP recipients and their families to make their voices heard. He urged them to pressure Senate Majority Leader Chuck Schumer and other Democratic leaders, arguing that it was the Democrats who were blocking a resolution. The president's message was clear. The path to relief ran through Congress, and political pressure could make a difference. The political battle lines were now unmistakable. Both sides dug in, with rallies, protests, and heated debates playing out across the country and in the halls of Congress. The fate of millions hung in the balance, as lawmakers and the White House struggled to find common ground. For families relying on SNAP, every update brought a mix of hope and anxiety. Some clung to the president's promises, while others feared that political gamesmanship would leave them without support. The uncertainty was overwhelming, but the possibility of help, however slim, offered a glimmer of hope. Inside the White House, officials waited anxiously for a court decision. Legal paperwork piled up, and every new development was met with tense anticipation. The administration's official stance was unwavering. They were ready to act, but could do nothing until the courts gave their approval. The crisis had become more than just a question of policy. It was now a test of legal authority, political will, and the resilience of the American people. As the days dragged on, the nation waited, hoping that a solution would soon be found. The SNAP crisis is rooted in a bitter political standoff. The White House blames Democrats for refusing to negotiate, claiming they're using SNAP recipients as leverage. Trump's call to flood Senator Schumer's office was a tactic to shift public pressure. Democrats counter that Trump could end the shutdown by signing a bipartisan funding bill already passed by the Senate. They accuse him of holding the government and millions of Americans hostage to his demands. Both sides insist the other is responsible, while families wait for relief. The standoff has turned SNAP into a political pawn, with real lives hanging in the balance. As politicians fiercely debated the future of food assistance, the courts quickly emerged as the new battleground. With legislative gridlock and mounting public anxiety, it became clear that the fate of millions would be decided not in the halls of Congress, but in courtrooms across the country. Over 22 states, joined by advocacy groups and concerned citizens, filed lawsuits against the Trump administration. Their demand was simple but urgent: release the critical SNAP funds that families depended on to put food on the table. The legal battle drew national attention, with rallies and protests outside courthouses underscoring the stakes for millions of Americans. In Rhode Island, Judge John McConnell took decisive action. He ordered the USDA to tap into a $6 billion contingency fund to pay out SNAP benefits, directly challenging the administration's legal arguments and emphasizing the urgency of the situation. Judge McConnell's ruling was clear. The immediate need to feed millions of vulnerable Americans far outweighed concerns about saving funds for hypothetical future emergencies. His decision brought hope to families who had been anxiously awaiting answers. Meanwhile, in Massachusetts, Judge Indira Talwani reached a similar conclusion. She found the administration's suspension of SNAP benefits unlawful, reinforcing the government's responsibility to use all available resources to prevent hunger. Both judges set a firm deadline of November 3, giving the administration just weeks to present a concrete payment plan. The clock was now ticking, and the pressure was on. These rulings provided the legal clarity President Trump had previously claimed was lacking. The courts had spoken, and their message was unambiguous. The administration argued that the logistics of distributing the funds were too complex and fraught with challenges, but the courts disagreed, insisting that bureaucratic hurdles could not justify inaction when so many lives were at stake. The message from the judiciary was unmistakable: legal obstacles had been cleared away. Now, decisive action was required from the administration. For millions of SNAP recipients, the uncertainty was far from over. Their future now depended on whether the administration would comply with the court orders and deliver the assistance they so desperately needed. While Washington stalled, some states took matters into their own hands. California released $80 million in state funds to support food banks and mobilized the National Guard to distribute food. Governor Newsom refused to wait for federal action, stepping in to protect 5.5 million SNAP recipients. New Mexico allocated $30 million for emergency food aid, quickly setting up systems to help families. These states showed that local leadership could fill the gap when federal systems fail. State-level action became a lifeline for vulnerable residents. Their message: even in federal chaos, you are not forgotten. Behind the headlines, the SNAP crisis is a human emergency. For families living paycheck to paycheck, the loss of food assistance is devastating. Parents must choose between rent, utilities, and feeding their children. Children's health and learning are at risk. Seniors and people with disabilities face hunger and isolation. Local grocery stores and small businesses also suffer as SNAP dollars disappear. The ripple effect threatens entire communities, not just individual households. Lawsuits argued that suspending SNAP would harm public health and economic stability. Stories pour in: single mothers skipping meals, seniors choosing between medicine and food, veterans struggling to get by. The real cost of political gridlock is measured in empty cupboards and hungry kids. The crisis is a stark reminder: policy decisions have life or death consequences. As the weekend unfolds, all eyes are on the November 3rd court deadline. The Trump administration must now decide, comply with court orders and release SNAP funds, or appeal and delay. Complying would quickly restore benefits and fulfill Trump's promise to act if given legal direction. An appeal could drag on for weeks, prolonging hardship for millions. The courts have provided a temporary fix, but only Congress can deliver a lasting solution by passing a budget. Until then, the risk of another crisis remains. The pressure is on both parties to compromise and reopen the government. For families, every day without SNAP is a day of uncertainty and fear. The next move will determine whether relief comes soon, or not at all. The nation waits, hoping for action. Amid the chaos, the goal is simple: get food to those in need. The courts have cleared a path for the administration to act, if it chooses to. States like California and New Mexico have shown leadership, but only Washington can provide a permanent fix. The hope is that this crisis will push leaders to compromise and restore stability. For 42 million Americans, the outcome is not about politics, it's about survival. The SNAP crisis exposes the cost of dysfunction, but also the power of decisive action. The nation waits for leaders to do their job and end the uncertainty.